The first time my son's fiancée looked at me, I was holding a mop. She didn't see a mother. She saw staff. And in that 1 second, that one careless, dismissive second, she told me everything I needed to know about the woman who was about to marry my only child. So I made a decision that would change everything. I said nothing. I picked the mop back up, and I disappeared into the walls of my own son's mansion. That MY name doesn't matter yet. Not for a while. What matters is this. 3 weeks ago, I buried my husband, and 2 weeks ago, I found the letter that told me my son might be next. Not literally. Not a knife-in-the-dark kind of next. Something slower. Something crueler. The kind of ruin that smiles at you across a dinner table. My son is Julian Cross. Perhaps you've heard the name. Cross Dynamics, biotech, real estate, 300 employees who call him sir and mean it. He built it from nothing after his father, and I refused to hand him a company on a silver platter. I was proud of that refusal once. I'm less sure now. Julian is getting married in 6 weeks. To a woman named Elena Marchetti. I had met her exactly twice. Both times, she smiled at me the way people smile at furniture. Pleasant, forgettable in the way. Both times, Julian's eyes followed her like she'd hung the moon herself. I didn't trust her. Not because of anything she'd said. Because of everything she hadn't. Here's a truth nobody tells you about grief. It makes you either soft or suspicious. My husband's death made me suspicious. In the weeks after the funeral, going through his files, the ones he kept separate from the company, the private folder marked Elena M. Do not show J. I found 3 things. A bank statement showing a transfer of $40,000 that Elena had borrowed from a joint account she wasn't supposed to have access to. A series of texts, printed and highlighted, between Elena and a man named Marcus Webb. Texts that were not the texts of 2 people who'd merely met at a work function. And a note, in my husband's handwriting, shaking slightly the way it did in his final months. Don't tell Julian yet. Need proof first. If something happens to me before I finish this, watch her. Watch her closely. She is not who she says she is. I sat on the floor of his study for 2 hours after reading that. Then I made a call. Not to Julian. Not yet. To Cross Dynamics' head of household staff. A woman named Priya who had worked for our family for 11 years, and who I knew would keep a secret if I asked her to keep it with my life in the balance. I need a job, I told her. Ma'am. In my son's house. As staff. Nobody can know who I am. The silence on the other end lasted 4 full seconds. Ma'am, are you certain? I looked at the note again. Watch her closely. I've never been more certain of anything. You'd be surprised how easy it is to disappear inside your own family. Julian hadn't seen me in 6 months. Not properly. Not with attention. Grief makes children distant in strange ways. Some cling, some run. My son ran into work, into wedding planning, into Elena's arms, and away from the mother who reminded him too much of the father he'd lost. So when a gray-haired woman named Margaret arrived at Cross Manor with a modest suitcase and downcast eyes, wearing the same Navy uniform as the other 6 staff members, Julian didn't look twice. He walked right past me in the hallway on my first morning. I was carrying fresh linens. He was on the phone, laughing at something, his tie loose, looking more like his father every single day. Julian, I whispered, so quiet it barely counted as sound. He didn't hear it. He didn't hear me at all. I told myself that was the point. I told myself the ache in my chest was nothing. It was not nothing. Elena ran the household like a woman auditioning for a role she desperately wanted to keep forever. She was polished in front of Julian. Soft laughter, gentle touches, the kind of attentiveness that looks like love if you don't examine it too closely. But the moment his car left the driveway each morning, something in her posture changed. Her shoulders dropped the performance. Her voice dropped an octave, flattened, sharpened. You missed a spot, she told me on day 3, gesturing at a windowsill that was, in fact, spotless. Do it again. I did it again. You people, she muttered, not quite under her breath, always need to be told twice. You people. I filed that away. I was learning her, the way you learn an opponent. Not the version she showed my son, but the one she showed the help. Because a person's true character isn't found in how they treat someone who can do something for them. It's found in how they treat someone who can't. On day 6, I overheard the first real crack. I was polishing silver in the pantry. An absurd, Old-fashioned task. Elena insisted on for aesthetic authenticity, though I suspected she just liked watching someone else do tedious things. When her phone rang in the next room, she thought she was alone. "I can't talk long," she said, voice low, urgent. "He's got a board call till 6. A pause. I stopped moving the polishing cloth. "I told you, Marcus, the prenup isn't finalized. His lawyer keeps pushing it back. I don't know if it's suspicion or just I don't know. But once we're married, community property law in this state means..." Another pause. Longer. "Don't call me at night anymore. If he sees your name on my phone one more time, I swear." The call ended. I stood very still in that pantry, silver cloth forgotten in my hand, feeling something cold and absolute settle into my bones. Marcus Webb, the same name from my husband's file. She wasn't just hiding an old relationship. She was running one. Right now. 6 weeks before her wedding. And she was doing everything she could to marry my son before that prenup could protect him. I want to tell you the story got simpler after that. It didn't. It got worse. Because 2 days later, I discovered something that made me question every assumption I'd built the last week around. I was in Julian's private study, dusting, ostensibly, though I'd taken to lingering in rooms longer than necessary, searching for anything that might explain the unease sitting permanently in my stomach, when I found a folder in his desk drawer that wasn't locked. Not because he was careless, because he wanted it found. By someone. Inside, photographs, financial records, a private investigator's report, dated 8 weeks ago, before his father died, before any of this began. My son already knew about Marcus Webb. He already knew about the money. He'd hired an investigator himself. I sat down slowly in his leather desk chair, my staff apron suddenly feeling like a costume in a play I didn't understand the plot of anymore. Because if Julian already knew Elena was hiding something, why was he still marrying her? Was he still marrying her? Or was there something else happening here, something neither Elena nor I could see? I heard footsteps in the hallway and shoved the folder back exactly as I'd found it, hard hammering, and slipped out the side door seconds before Julian entered a study. I caught one glimpse of his face through the crack in the door before I disappeared. He didn't look like a man in love. He looked like a man playing a very long, very careful game. And suddenly, I wasn't sure anymore which one of us, mother or son, had truly gone undercover first. Tell me honestly, if you found out your own child was hiding something this big from you, would you keep pretending too, just to see how far the truth would go? For 3 days, I watched my son wear his fiancée's hand like a prop. He'd hold it at breakfast, photograph it for people who weren't in the room, kiss her knuckles at the door before leaving for work, slow and deliberate, the way you perform a gesture for an audience rather than feel it for a person. I used to know the difference between Julian's real smile and his boardroom smile. His real one reached his eyes and made him look, for one unguarded second, like the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides. His boardroom smile was symmetrical, practiced, cold at the edges. He was giving Elena the boardroom smile every single morning. And Elena, sharp as she was about money, about staff, about control, didn't seem to notice at all. Or she noticed and didn't care, because a smile that pays for a lifestyle is still a smile worth collecting. That told me something important. Whatever Julian was doing, he wasn't doing it out of love anymore. He was doing it on purpose. On day 9, I got close enough to the truth to feel its heat. Elena had scheduled a final dress fitting and left the house for 4 hours. Julian, unusually, worked from home that day, locked in his study with the door shut, voice low on calls I couldn't make out through the heavy oak. Priya found me in the linen closet, folding towels I didn't need to fold. "You should know something," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder like the walls themselves might report her. "Mr. Cross asked me last week for a full list of household staff. Background, references, everything. Including you." My hands went still around the towel. "Did he suspect?" "No." Priya's face was tight. "I don't think it was about you at all. I think he's building a file on everyone in this house. Like he's preparing for something. Like he thinks something is going to happen, and he wants to know exactly who's around when it does." I thought of the investigator's folder, the photographs, the financial records dated before his father died. "Priya," I said slowly, "how long has Julian known about Marcus Webb?" She hesitated, so long I thought she wouldn't answer. "Since before the engagement," she finally admitted. I only know because I heard him on the phone with the investigator once, months ago. He said, she swallowed, he said, let her think she's winning. I want to see how far she'll go. The towel slipped out of my hands. He knew before he proposed. My son hadn't been deceived at all. He had engineered this. The engagement. The wedding countdown. The prenup delays Elena was so anxious about. He was running his own operation, inside his own house, against his own fiancée, and I had walked directly into the middle of it wearing a maid's uniform, thinking I was the only one playing a role. I wasn't the only undercover person in that mansion. I was the second, and I nearly blew everything that night. I found Julian alone on the terrace after Elena had gone up to bed, staring out at the dark tree line with a whiskey he wasn't drinking, just holding, the way his father used to hold a glass when his mind was somewhere heavier than the room he stood in. I almost said his name. My real voice, not Margaret's careful, lowered staff voice. I almost crossed the terrace and put my hand on my son's shoulder and told him I know. I know what she's doing. I know what you're doing. Let me help you. But something stopped me. Not fear. Curiosity. The same cold, clear curiosity that had gotten me into this uniform in the first place. Because if I revealed myself now, I would only ever get his version of the story. Filtered. Managed. The way sons manage their mothers when they think the truth might hurt them. I wanted the truth raw, unmanaged. I wanted to see what Julian did when he thought absolutely nobody who mattered was watching. So instead, I did what Margaret would do. Would you like anything else before I close up the kitchen, Mr. Cross? He turned, startled, like he'd forgotten the house had staff in it at all, the exact blindness I had been counting on for 9 days. No. Thank you. He squinted at me in the dark, and for one heart-stopping second, I thought he sees me. He knows. Margaret, I supplied quietly. Margaret, he repeated, testing the name like it meant nothing, because to him it didn't. No, I'm fine. Go home. Get some rest. Go home. As if I had one to go to that wasn't currently 3 doors down the hallway from his. I nodded and turned to leave, and that's when he said the thing that changed everything. Margaret, wait. I froze back to him, praying my shoulders weren't shaking. Do you think? He stopped, started again. Do you think it's possible to love someone and still need to watch them very, very closely? I turned halfway, chose my words like I was diffusing something live. I think, I said slowly, the people worth loving are usually the ones who never needed watching in the first place, sir. Silence. Then, quietly, almost to himself, yeah, that's what I keep hoping. He didn't say anything else. I let myself out, but I stood in the hallway outside for a long moment afterward, hand pressed flat against the wall, because I'd heard something underneath his words that I couldn't shake. My son wasn't just testing Elena. He was hoping, desperately, quietly hoping, that she would prove him wrong. Somewhere under all that strategy, all that cold investigation, there was still a boy who wanted to be loved honestly. And that terrified me more than anything Elena had done. Because strategy can survive betrayal. Hope can't point 4 days before the 12-week mark I'd given myself to figure everything out. Elena made a mistake that cracked the entire case open. She hosted a small lunch for 3 of her old friends from the city, women with sharp laughs and sharper opinions, the kind who talk freely once they think the only ears in the room belong to staff too invisible to matter. I served the second course in silence and heard everything. Honestly, Elena, 40,000 is nothing compared to what you'll have once the ring's actually on. One of them, a redhead named Priscilla, said around a mouthful of salad. Once you're Mrs. Cross, Marcus can wait a little longer, can't he? Elena's laugh was thin. Marcus isn't waiting for anything. We're done. I told you that. You told us that in March, too, said the second friend, unconvinced, swirling her wine. This time it's real. Elena snapped, quieter now, glancing toward the hallway, toward me, though her eyes slid right past. Because I was invisible, because I was furniture, because I was exactly what she decided I was on the first day we met. Julian's lawyer keeps stalling the prenup. Every week it doesn't get signed is a week closer to the wedding happening without it. I just need 6 more weeks. 6 more weeks. I nearly dropped the serving tray. She wasn't confused about the prenup delay. She wasn't hoping it would resolve. She was counting on it not being signed at all, running out the clock, betting that love, or laziness, or a distracted grieving fiancée would let the wedding happen before the paperwork ever caught up to her. "And if it does get signed?" Priscilla asked. Elena's voice went flat, and for the first time since I'd met her, I heard something genuinely dangerous underneath the polish. "Then I'll deal with that when it happens. I always land on my feet." I set the tray down on the sideboard with hands that had gone perfectly, professionally still, even as everything inside me screamed. This wasn't a woman who'd made mistakes and was trying to move past them. This was a woman with a plan, a timeline, a contingency for every version of the truth coming out. And she had absolutely no idea that the help, standing 3 feet away from her, refilling water glasses with a steady hand, was the mother of the man she was planning to rob, and that every word she just said would eventually be repeated back to her in a room with far higher stakes than a lunch table. And I found the investigator's name on a business card tucked in the same folder I'd already violated once. Daniel Reyes, an address downtown. No firm name, the kind of man who works alone because his clients pay for silence, not signage. Getting there without Elena or Julian noticing my absence took 3 days of planning around a fake dentist appointment Priya covered for me without asking a single question. I've never been more grateful for 11 years of loyalty in my life. Daniel Reyes turned out to be younger than I expected, with the tired eyes of a man who'd seen too many marriages end before they'd even begun. "You're not supposed to be here," he said the moment I sat down across from him, before I'd even given a name. "Julian Cross's mother doesn't work as domestic staff. I read the obituary for her husband 3 weeks ago. I know exactly who you are. So much for anonymity." "Then you know why I'm here," I said. He studied me for a long moment, then reached into a drawer and slid a thin folder across the desk, thinner than the one I'd already seen in Julian's study. "He doesn't know I'm showing you this," Reyes said. "But frankly, ma'am, I think somebody in that family needs to see the whole picture because your son is about to make a decision that's going to blow up in ways he doesn't understand yet." I opened the folder. Inside were bank records I hadn't seen before. Records showing that the $40,000 borrowed from the joint account wasn't the only transfer. There were 4 more, smaller, more careful, spread out over 8 months, totaling nearly $180,000. All of it funneled, eventually, into an account under a name I didn't recognize, E. Marchetti Holdings, LLC. "She's not just taking money," Reyes said quietly. "She's building something. An exit, a parachute, in case the marriage doesn't work out, or works out and then doesn't, if you understand me." "You think she's planning to leave him? After marrying him?" "I think," Reyes said carefully, "that Elena Marchetti has done this before. Different city, different name variation, different rich fiancé. Engaged twice previously. Both engagements ended right around the 6-month mark, right after enough joint assets existed to make the breakup profitable. She's very good at making sure she never leaves a relationship poorer than she entered it." The room tilted slightly around me. "Does Julian know this? All of it? He knows about Marcus Webb. He knows about the $40,000. "I don't think," Reyes said, choosing his words with visible care, "that I've had the chance to show him the LLC yet. He's been difficult to reach lately. Distracted. I get the sense he doesn't want to look at the whole picture at once. Grief does that to people. Makes them stall on the truths that would break their heart completely, even while they investigate the smaller ones." I sat with that for a long moment. My son wasn't naive. He was doing exactly what I'd done with his father's note for 2 full weeks before I acted on it. He knew enough to be suspicious. He didn't yet know enough to be devastated. And some part of him, I understood now with an ache that went all the way to my bones, was choosing not to look at the rest of the file, because as long as he didn't look, he could still pretend there was a version of this where Elena loved him for real. "I need everything you have," I told Reyes. "All of it. Every document. And I need you to keep investigating, quietly, the LLC, the previous engagements, all of it. I'll pay whatever you're already charging my son double." Reyes leaned back, studying me with something that might have been respect. "Can I ask what you're planning to do with all this, Mrs. Cross?" I thought about the mop, the dismissive glance. "You people." The lunch conversation about the prenup, spoken 3 feet from my face because I didn't count as a person who could hear, understand, or remember. "I'm going to let her keep believing I'm invisible," I said, "until the exact moment that belief destroys her." I want to tell you the plan came together neatly after that. It didn't, because 5 days later, something happened that nobody, not me, not Reyes, not even Julian with all his careful investigating, had accounted for. Marcus Webb showed up at the house. Not at night, not secretly. In broad daylight, on a Tuesday afternoon, while Julian was at a board meeting and Elena believed the house held nobody who mattered. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door. A knock. Then Elena's voice, sharp with panic, hissing through the entryway. "What are you doing here? Are you insane? He could be home any minute." "I'm done waiting, Elena." Marcus's voice was tight, wound up like a man who'd rehearsed this on the drive over. "You said 6 weeks. It's been 4 months. I'm not some placeholder while you play house with your billionaire. Keep your voice down." "No. I want an answer. Are you marrying him or not? Because if you are, I need to know now, because I've got decisions of my own to make. People I need to talk to." A silence stretched, so long I moved closer to the kitchen doorway, breath held. "What people?" Elena's voice had changed, the polish gone, something rawer and more frightened underneath. "His mother's lawyer, for one," Marcus said. "The one handling the estate. I hear the family's been asking questions about you. Background checks. I hear there's an investigator poking around. Maybe I should introduce myself. Tell him what I know about the LLC. About Chicago. About. Don't you dare." Elena's voice cracked, finally all the way through. "You'd be destroying yourself too, Marcus. Everything we built. We built. Not she built. We." I gripped the doorframe. Marcus Webb wasn't just an affair. He was a partner. An accomplice. Whatever Elena was running, the LLC, the pattern Reyes had uncovered, the previous engagements that ended suspiciously profitable, Marcus wasn't a victim of her scheme, and he wasn't just a man she couldn't quit. He was in on it. "We had a plan," Marcus said, quieter now, dangerous in a different way. "The plan was you marry him, you get access, we build the exit fund together like we did before, and then you come home. To me. That was always the plan, Elena. Don't tell me you've actually started believing your own performance." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in that house. Because Elena didn't deny it. She didn't say a single word in her own defense. Elena finally spoke, and when she did, her voice had lost every trace of the woman who charmed rooms for a living. "Get out," she said. "Now. Before someone sees your car in the driveway. Not until you tell me the truth. Are you actually falling for him?" A long pause. Too long. "It doesn't matter what I feel," Elena said quietly. "It matters what we need. 40,000 isn't enough to start over, Marcus. You know that. We need the wedding. We need at least 6 months of joint assets before anything else happens. Please, just trust the plan a little longer. I've trusted the plan for a year. Then trust it for 8 more weeks." Another silence. Then footsteps. His moving toward the door. Then stopping. 8 weeks, Marcus said. "And then I'm done being patient, Elena. With you, or with waiting." The door closed. I heard Elena's breath shudder out in the entryway, heard something that might have been a small, broken laugh, or might have been the opposite. Then her footsteps retreated upstairs, fast, uneven, the sound of a woman who had just watched her carefully built performance crack down the middle and wasn't yet sure how bad the damage was. I stood in that kitchen a long time after the house went quiet. I had what I needed now. Not suspicion. Not fragments. A full, undeniable picture. Elena and Marcus running a coordinated scheme, targeting my son specifically, timed around a wedding neither of them viewed as anything but a transaction with a countdown clock attached. The only question left was what my son already knew, and what he intended to do about it. I decided it was time to find out that I caught him alone again, 2 nights later, in the same study where I'd found the folder. This time I didn't wear the uniform. I knocked. He looked up, and for a moment, one full, suspended moment, his face did something I hadn't seen since his father's funeral. It crumpled, just slightly, before he caught it and rebuilt the mask. "Mom!" He stood too fast, chair scraping. "What are you? How did you get in here?" I thought. "I thought a lot of things too, Julian," I said. "For 9 days, I thought I was the only person in this house pretending to be someone I wasn't." I watched the understanding hit him in stages. First confusion, then disbelief, then as his eyes moved over my plain gray sweater, my ordinary shoes, no longer Navy staff uniform, recognition, sharp and sudden like a physical blow. "Margaret," he said, quiet, horrified, "you've been here. In my house. As staff." "Yes." "For how long?" 9 days before I confirmed what you already knew. And I suspect you've known considerably longer than that." He sat back down slowly, like his legs had simply stopped being reliable. For a long moment he said nothing at all, and I let the silence sit there between us, because I had learned patience in that uniform, learned it from watching a woman who wielded silence like a weapon, and now I was going to use that same weapon on my own son to get him to finally tell me the truth. "How much do you know?" he finally asked. "I know about Marcus Webb. I know about the $40,000, and the other transfers you probably haven't told your investigator I've already seen, the LLC. I know she's stalling the prenup on purpose. I know Marcus was in this house 4 days ago, and I know he gave her 8 weeks before he stops waiting." "What I don't know," I said, my voice finally breaking just slightly, the first crack I'd allowed myself since this whole thing started, "is why my son is still planning to marry her." Julian put his head in his hands. "Because I needed to know how far she'd go," he said, muffled. "Dad used to say, you don't really know someone until you watch what they do when they think there's nothing left to perform for. I wanted to see the whole picture before I made a decision I couldn't undo. I wanted proof so complete that when I finally confronted her, there'd be nothing left to lie about. No wiggle room. No half-truths. I wanted her to have to sit across from me and hear every single thing she thought she'd gotten away with. That's not a plan, Julian. That's a slow bleed. You've been sleeping next to a woman who is actively planning your financial ruin for 4 months." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know, Mom. But every time I thought about ending it, some part of me kept asking, what if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation? What if I blow up my entire life over suspicion and it turns out?" "It turns out nothing," I said gently, sitting across from him now, my son, not a stranger in a study, not a target of investigation, just my child, exhausted and grieving in and over his head. "I heard her, Julian, with my own ears. She has done this before. Different city, different men. She is not confused about what she's doing. She has never once, not for a single day, loved you the way you deserve to be loved." He was quiet a long time. "Dad knew too, didn't he?" he finally said. "That's why you're here. That's why you took the job. He found something before he died. He found the beginning of it. I found the rest." Julian looked up at me, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, he looked like my son and not like the CEO of Cross Dynamics. "So what do we do now?" I reached across the desk and took his hand. "Now," I said, "we stop waiting for her to reveal herself on her own timeline. We put her on ours. We built it over 3 nights, working in whispers after Elena had gone to bed, spreading Reyes's files across the same desk where Julian had once hidden them from everyone, including himself. The plan was simple in its bones and brutal in its execution. We would not confront Elena privately. Private confrontations left room for tears, for renegotiation, for the kind of performance Elena had clearly perfected over multiple engagements in multiple cities. A woman who could cry on command in front of a lunch table of friends could certainly cry on command in front of one grieving fiancé, alone, with no witnesses and no consequences beyond his own broken heart. No. If Elena had built her scheme in rooms full of people who underestimated her, she would be unbuilt the same way. In public, in front of witnesses, at the one event she'd spent 4 months manipulating into existence. The wedding. Not the ceremony itself. Julian wasn't cruel, whatever else he'd become in the last few months, and I hadn't raised him to humiliate a woman in front of 200 guests for sport, however much she deserved it. The rehearsal dinner. 40 guests. Family. Close friends. Elena's mother, who Reyes's research suggested had no idea about her daughter's financial history and would be, I suspected, genuinely horrified to learn the truth. A room small enough to feel intimate, large enough to make hiding impossible, and populated by exactly the people whose good opinion Elena valued most and had worked hardest to secure. We would let her stand up, let her give whatever toast she'd no doubt rehearsed, full of warmth and gratitude and love for a family she was 3 weeks away from robbing. And then Julian would speak, not with anger, That was my one condition, the thing I made him promise before I'd agree to any of it. Not a shouting match, not a scene that would let Elena reframe herself as the victim of a man's temper. The truth. Calm. Documented. Undeniable. I would be there too. Not as Margaret, not hidden in a hallway with a serving tray, but as his mother, standing beside him, because I had earned the right to watch this moment happen after 9 days of silence in my own son's house. Are you sure about this? I asked him, the final night, papers spread between us like a battle map. Julian looked at the photo of Elena on his desk, the engagement photo, both of them laughing at something off camera, a moment that had felt real when it was taken and felt like a costume now. I loved who I thought she was, he said quietly. I think I need to watch that person disappear in front of everyone who thought they knew her too. Otherwise, some part of me will always wonder if I imagined the whole thing. If I was the one who was wrong. You weren't wrong, I said. You were patient. There's a difference. The room was beautiful, the way rooms always are right before they become the setting for someone's undoing. String lights, white orchids, 40 guests in their best clothes, wine glasses catching the light, the particular hum of a crowd that believes it knows exactly what kind of evening it's attending. Elena wore emerald green. She looked radiant, genuinely so, laughing with Julian's cousins, embracing his aunts, playing the role of future Mrs. Cross with a warmth so convincing that even I, standing at the back of the room in a navy dress instead of a uniform, felt a brief, unwanted flicker of doubt. What if we're wrong? Then I remember the pantry, the silver cloth in my hand. You people. And the doubt evaporated like it had never existed at all. Elena gave her toast first, as planned, sweet and practiced, thanking Julian's late father for raising a son with such an extraordinary heart. Thanking me, specifically, gesturing toward the back of the room where she assumed I'd been standing the whole evening. No idea I'd spent 9 days 3 feet from her elbow, welcoming her with such warmth. The room applauded. Elena's mother dabbed her eyes. Julian stood. I watched 40 faces turn toward him with warm, expectant smiles, ready for a groom's toast full of the same soft sentiment Elena had just delivered. He didn't smile back. Thank you all for being here tonight, Julian said, and something in his tone, level, careful, entirely without warmth, made the room's temperature drop by several degrees before anyone understood why. I want to start by telling you a story about my father. Elena's smile flickered, just slightly uncertain now. About 4 months before he died, my father started keeping a private file, Julian continued. He didn't tell me about it. He was building a case, quietly out of love, because he suspected something was wrong, and he didn't want to hurt me until he was certain. My mother found that file after he passed. And instead of simply telling me what she found, he glanced toward me, and I stepped forward, out of the back of the room into the light. She decided to finish what he started. She took a job in this house, as staff. For 9 days, she cleaned floors and polished silver in a room 3 feet from conversations nobody thought she could hear. A ripple went through the room. Elena's face had gone very, very pale. Julian, she started. I'm not finished, he said. Still calm, still level, and that calm was somehow more frightening than any shout could have been. My mother heard you tell your friends you were counting on the prenup not being signed in time. She heard you tell Marcus Webb, who visited this house 11 days ago while I was at a board meeting, that you needed 8 more weeks, and that the plan required at least 6 months of joint marital assets before, in your words, you'd come home to him. Someone gasped. Elena's mother had gone rigid in her seat. I have bank records, Julian continued, showing $180,000 transferred over 8 months into an LLC under your name. I have records of 2 previous engagements in 2 other cities, both ending suspiciously soon after significant joint assets existed, and both ending in your favor. I have all of it, documented, verified, and I have chosen to share it here, tonight, in front of the people whose trust you spent the last 4 months carefully building, because I think everyone in this room deserves to know exactly who they've been celebrating. The silence that followed was the kind you could feel on your skin. Elena stood, chair scraping, face white and then suddenly terribly red. This is insane! You're going to believe the word of a maid over. She's not a maid, Julian said quietly. She's my mother. And she's the only person in this entire story who never once lied about who she really was. I want to tell you Elena broke down and confessed everything. Tearfully, dramatically, the way villains do in the stories she'd have preferred to be the heroine of. She didn't. She tried, for one final, desperate moment, to salvage the room, turning to Elena's mother first, hand outstretched, voice pitched to that same performative warmth. "Mom, you know me, you know this isn't." Her mother, to her credit, didn't take the offered hand. "Is it true?" the older woman asked, very quietly, and something in her voice told me this wasn't the first time she'd had reason to ask her daughter that question. "The LLC, the other engagements. Elena, is it true?" And in the silence that followed, the silence where Elena should have denied it, should have performed outrage, should have done anything except stand there with her mouth slightly open and her eyes darting toward the exits, everyone in that room got their answer. She didn't deny it. She ran. Not metaphorically. She grabbed her clutch, pushed past two of Julian's cousins, and walked out of the rehearsal dinner in her emerald green dress with 40 guests watching her go and not one of them moving to stop her. Marcus Webb, I later learned from Reyes, was arrested 3 weeks after that night, not for the relationship, which was legal, however sordid, but for wire fraud connected to the LLC, once Elena's financial records were formally handed over to investigators by Julian's legal team. Elena herself avoided criminal charges, but not consequence. The story moved through the same social circle she'd worked so hard to charm, and by the time the actual wedding date arrived, the date that never happened, there wasn't a single door left open to her in that city. Here is a part of the story I didn't expect, even after everything. 3 months later, cleaning out the last of my husband's private files, the ones I hadn't had the heart to finish sorting, I found one more page tucked behind the note that had started all of this. A second note, later dated, written in the final weeks before he died, when his handwriting had grown so unsteady I almost couldn't read it. "If you're reading this, it means I never got to finish the job myself. I need you to know I wasn't only trying to protect Julian from her. I was trying to protect you too. I've watched you shrink since the diagnosis, watched you let yourself become quiet and small and invisible in rooms you used to command. I think some part of me knew that the only way you'd ever come back to yourself was if you had a reason bigger than grief to fight for. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it, but I have a feeling you're about to remember exactly who you are." I sat with that letter for a long time, because my husband hadn't just been building a case against Elena. He had been building one final gift for me, a reason, disguised as a warning, to stop grieving quietly in the shadows of my own life and step back into the light, however unusual the path there turned out to be. I never told Julian about that second note. Some things are meant to stay between a wife and the last words her husband left for her. But I kept the uniform. It hangs in my closet now, not as a costume, but as a reminder of 9 days when I chose to become invisible on purpose, and discovered, in the process, that I had never actually disappeared at all. Some people don't regret betraying you. They regret failing to realize that the woman they dismissed as furniture was quietly rebuilding the entire room around them.